And welcome back, rugby fans, to Rugby 411. As always, I'm your host. My name is Joshua Shibata. And yes, it has been a while, hasn't it been, since I've last done a video, but it's only because, well, a couple of things. Real life, job, and everything has kind of gotten a little bit hectic around the holiday season, so means less time to do videos. Plus, two, with most of USA Rugby not doing as much because we're going into the holiday season, gearing up for Major League Rugby, which will be starting in March. There's just hasn't been a lot to do until recently. And then when things started to happen within the last couple of weeks, kind of wanted to find a moment to find a moment to get a video done once all the news started to breaking through, so we can kind of collect our thoughts and figure out things. Also, too, which I'll get into in this video, kind of hoping to see what will happen with the hopefully happening LA rugby team. It is supposed to be happening. So was just waiting for a couple things, but now that life and work has kind of died down, now that we're heading into Christmas and the New Year, which by the way, happy holidays everybody out there. Thought this would be the right time to make a video. So this is gonna be kind of a long video. I'll probably put some time caps into it because I know there's gonna be certain things that people are definitely gonna be interested in, and some things that people aren't gonna care so much about. So I'll let you have a chance to kind of peruse through the video. But let's just encompass it as what it is. This is going to be Major League Rugby update by Rugby 411. What we know, what we've heard. You know me, I don't like to really go into a lot of rumors. I'd rather report news that is actual factual. But, for the most part, the things that I'm going to be talking about have at least been confirmed by a couple of sources. I will tell you when things are a little bit sketch and sus, and then you just take it from there. But I would always try to rely myself on being more based on facts than just rumors and innuendos and things that some people think will happen, but have no actuality in proving that they will. So let's backtrack a couple weeks to right after Thanksgiving, roughly about the Saturday after Thanksgiving. There was word of the possibility of the Toronto Arrows being defunct. And unfortunately, that was confirmed the Monday after, November 27th, I believe, that unfortunately, after 5 years in Major League Rugby, the Toronto Arrows, the only Canadian franchise in Major League Rugby, unfortunately, is no more. Apparently, this has been something that has been kind of been in the works since, unfortunately, the passing of co-founder and owner Bill Webb back in, I believe it was August. Bill Webb had a lot to do with building up the Toronto Arrows franchise, fronting a lot of money, unfortunately also building up a lot of debt. And unfortunately, after his passing, there was supposedly a group that was going to buy the Arrows, but the group that was established after Bill Webb passed away did not have enough power, enough energy, and finances to support the Arrows. Unfortunately, as I mentioned, the team that was going to buy the Arrows, unfortunately, they fell out. And with that being said, there was just no way that the Toronto franchise can last, and unfortunately, they had to close their doors, as I mentioned, after 5 years. The Toronto Arrows have been a strong part of Major League Rugby. Again, the only Canadian presence in this North American competition. That's a huge blow. We'll go a little bit more into details about it because there is some news about a future possible expansion team, another one in Canada that might pop up. Again, that's going to be more rumor than anything else. But this is a big blow to Canadian rugby, as the Toronto Arrows were a great franchise in establishing and developing Canadian players, giving them a chance to compete on pretty much not a national level, but at least a localized level of a higher competition. I mean, being able to play with players that eventually Canadian nationals will be competing as USA Eagles during, our usual Canadian USA clashes, especially now with the aforementioned Pacific Cup competition that will include Canada, USA, Japan, Tonga, Samoa, and Fiji. I think I remember correctly. So obviously you got to give some of these younger players and these Canadian players a chance to compete throughout the year, like what Major League Rugby is doing for the U.S. young players. Unfortunately, without a Canadian presence in Major League Rugby, now that kind of is gone. No word yet what's going to happen with the Arrows Academy, which was building up Canadian players go into Toronto. Again, there is some rumor of what's going to happen with that, which I will talk about at the end, near the end of the video. But this is a big blow to Canadian rugby as a whole, especially considering, just like with USA Rugby, Canada was not able to qualify for this year's Rugby World Cup. First time in a long time that's happened. Also, the Canadian Sevens rugby team has struggled quite a bit. They just barely made it staying into the Rugby Sevens competition, the World Rugby Sevens competition. If you're a big fan of that, which I am, it just started up again. Canada barely stayed into regulation to stay in, but they're on the precipice there, and they also did not. They're also in the repechage tournament to try to qualify for the Olympics in France, which they missed out of because USA Sevens team beat them. So Canada is 1 foot out of not qualifying for the for the World Olympics, which of course that would be a huge blow to them. So Canadian rugby not in a great place, and with the Toronto Arrows franchise folding, definitely doesn't help either. Like I mentioned before, there might be a silver lining in this cloudy news for Toronto, but overall, this is not a good thing for Major League Rugby as well, because then almost a week later, the second team from Major League Rugby announced they're folding. The former MLR champions, the New York Ironworkers, unfortunately had to close their doors after 4 years. This one came more as a surprise to most of us, just because, yes, they were struggling. Yes, they had to move their venue quite a few times in their history. But, I mean, this was a group that, I mean, they had a pretty strong fan base, not the biggest, but very diehard supporters. They had a great team. I mean, good Lord, they just won the Major League Shield in 2022. So, I mean, they were a very, very strong team, and they were in the competition for 2023 as well. So it kind of came as a blow that all of a sudden they had to shut their doors. A lot of talented players on that team that had to now disperse. They were supposedly going to get a lot of new players to come over. I believe Nate Osberger was supposed to go over there. I believe Chris Mattina from the Chicago Hounds was going to move over to New York. So there were going to be a very competitive team, which unfortunately now they had to close their doors. They couldn't find financial backing as well. And so now they're kaput. Which again, huge blow to Major League Rugby, as New York is the biggest media market in the country. Not having a franchise in New York is not very good if you're trying to be a successful sports conglomerate in the United States. You need that presence in New York, otherwise it's going to be very tough, just like you need the presence in LA, which of course we'll get to in a couple minutes, as well as you probably need a presence in maybe the Texas area, maybe in Florida, which, you know, Major League Rugby is going to have now with Miami, and they still do with Houston, with Dallas. So, I mean, it's going to be a struggle now for Major League Rugby, which they've been kind of struggling for the last couple years, but the New York one definitely is a blow. In the meantime, what happens to all the players in Toronto and New York? They had a dispersal draft December 13th. Those results were not confirmed, but were at least somewhat supported by certain players, certain teams. It's odd that Major League Rugby doesn't really have any transparency on these dispersal drafts like they did with Miami as well. Dallas, I think they were a little bit more transparent, if I can remember correctly, but it's weird that they're not very transparent with these dispersal drafts for us diehard Major League Rugby fans to know where these players are going. Though it's going to be interesting. Certain teams have really lucked out with this draft, especially you got to look at Chicago, man. Chicago is going to be a huge team, and I'll do videos with the way it's going to look like, especially as I get into how the competition for Major League Rugby is going to be going on in 2024. I'll probably do individual team videos this time and really go into depth of what the rosters are, who's on what team now. But man, Chicago, just a little sneak preview, they're going to have a amazing team. I mean, in the dispersal draft, they picked up the number one try scorer of all time, Dylan the Butcher Fawcett. They also picked up really good Toronto Arrows player, the big man Lucas Rumble. I mean, Chicago's going to be a huge team. So it's going to be very interesting. And also, too, now just recently the news that former LA superstar, one of the most prolific Australian national players of all time, Matt Guiteau, coming out of retirement to play for the San Diego Legion. Again, 2024 Major League Rugby is going to be really interesting, really fun. I can't wait to make videos for that. I can't wait to go back into the season. And I can't wait because also, too, there is supposed to be an LA team. Now, I know we haven't heard anything about this LA franchise. And, you know, as I mentioned before to a lot of people that have asked, and I know it sounds weird, believe me, I am no way any kind of media market individual, guru, or person that knows how to run a sports team. But as I said from the start, especially when we didn't hear anything before Thanksgiving, after Thanksgiving, anytime in December, I was kind of telling people I don't think we'll hear anything until at least New Year's. And it really, I am filming this currently right now, December 21st. And yeah, I don't think we'll hear anything about this new LA team until next year. Now, the LA team has been confirmed, or at least right now. Major League Rugby did release the 2024 schedule, and LA is on there, albeit they mentioned that there is no confirmed LA name, there is no confirmed LA team name or logo. They just have a generic LA that almost looks just like this, coincidentally enough. But they are on the schedule. What we know about the schedule is that it's going to be a 16 game season for every team. 8 home, 8 away. Teams will be all in one conference. That's going to be the interesting part. There is no East, there is no West, there is no Central. Once upon a time, back when they had New York and when they had Toronto, it was announced earlier in the month or late in the month of November that there were going to be 3 different conferences: East, West, and Central. Now there is just one. Everyone is in one group. The top 8 teams are going to make the playoffs, which is a little weird. I mean, that I'm not going to be a big fan of. 8 out of 11 teams make the playoffs. I think that's way too many, but so be it. 8 out of 11 teams make the knockout playoff bracket, and then we go into the championship game, which rumor is, I don't believe it's been confirmed yet, but rumor is San Diego will host the Major League Rugby championship game in 2024, which is, you know, that sounds awesome because, of course, Snapdragon Stadium is beautiful, is huge, is brand new. It would be a great place. And San Diego, of course, in the month of July will be, you know, pretty good weather. So not too shabby if it is held over there. Now, again, we don't know too much about the LA team. What I do know for sure is that the people that support the LA team are some of the money behind the Tel Aviv Heat, which is the very first Israeli pro rugby team. If you don't know too much about them, they compete in the Rugby Europe Super Cup. They also have a 7 team that competes at Rugby Town. They're pretty good. Most of the roster of the Tel Aviv Heat players are actually, funny enough, from South Africa. So the nickname is the Israeli Springboks. But they have a roster of majority of South African players, but of course Israeli players as well. But a couple names that will seem familiar and kind of track on players that could possibly be on this LA team include former Utah player Yuri Van Buren, who has been traded to Atlanta, who's now the LA team. Jordan Chait, who was the phenomenal fly half for Seattle, who now has been traded to Atlanta, which is now LA. The only other player that's on that roster, the Tel Aviv Heat roster currently, is Niall Saunders, who used to play for Utah, then got traded to Atlanta, which is now LA. He has not been confirmed to be on the current LA roster. LA roster because it hasn't been confirmed either. But that Ireland under 20s player, English nationalist, could possibly find his name on the LA team. The only other players that we know from LA are, of course, the people that they picked up during the collegiate draft early in the year, and then this current dispersal draft. I don't know how many international players they'll have because, of course, all MLR teams only have a certain number of international spots. So it will be interesting to see what this LA roster looks like. But at least we do know a couple players that are already going to be on there, which has been confirmed again because they do play for the Tel Aviv Heat team right now, currently in Israel. So that's going to be the LA team. Right now, we also do know, hasn't been confirmed 100%, but it makes sense that they will be playing in the Dignity Health Sports Park, which is in Carson City. And if you don't know too much of the LA area, it's close to Inglewood, famous Inglewood, the one that you always hear in the rap songs, and it's near the LAX, the International Airport for Los Angeles. It's a beautiful stadium. It's where Rugby Sevens competition is played, which is always awesome. Now, it's also the second biggest soccer stadium in the United States, home to the LA Galaxy. Only second to Geodis Park in, oddly enough, Nashville, Tennessee. Who knew Nashville, Tennessee would have the biggest soccer stadium in the United States? Now, here's the kicker, though. The opening game for the LA franchise, which they play against Utah, is going to be the same weekend as the LA Sevens competition at Dignity Sports Park. The opening game for LA is going to be on Sunday. The competition for LA Sevens is Saturday and Sunday. Now, the competition this year includes the women's. If you are familiar with how the LA Sevens used to run, is it was only men. The women would play at other events, but this is the first time every event in the Sevens competition, World Rugby Sevens competition, is both men and women combined. So because of all the games that they're going to be playing, they are going to be played in two different fields. The main field, which is home to the LA Galaxy, 27,000 seated stadium, and then there's a track and field stadium that's on that same campus for the Cal State Dominguez Hills, LA, which is a smaller stadium, 5,000 people. Now, the belief is that the LA team will be playing in that 5,000 seat smaller stadium because the Sevens competition will take place. It starts really early during the day because it's all day, but it should wrap up around 5 p.m., which will coincide with the kickoff time for the LA's first game to be 7 p.m. So pretty smart marketing if you really think about it, to have a huge fan base of rugby fans already there for the LA Sevens, and then shifting their way just maybe 100 yards to the smaller stadium to watch the very first LA game. I mean, you already have a group of people that are huge rugby fans, or at least love rugby in some aspect. And if you just sell the tickets, not super expensive, maybe even have package deal, buy 7 tickets, you get a LA Rugby 7, you get an LA Rugby's game ticket for free. I mean, you build that fan base right there for people who may not be too into 15s rugby, but at least can make that transition from 7s to 15s, at least for that one day. And then, hey, if they love it, they can always come back for the next game. It's really smart rugby marketing, and I think it might work. And also, too, if you think about it, as much as it'd be awesome to be in the 27,000-seater Dignity Health Sports Park, the main stadium, I mean, especially for a sport that's still not very big in the United States, for a fan base like LA, which it's hard to be a sports team in LA because you have so much competition, not just in the sports world, but just there's so many other things to do in LA. As an LA native, I can tell you, especially on a nice day, which is practically almost every day of the year, you can go to the beach. You can go skiing if you want to because the mountains usually have snow almost year round. You can go to concerts. You can go to any kind of events. You name it in LA. There's something going on. So sports in general, it doesn't necessarily have the forefront unless you are an established team like the Lakers, like the Dodgers, now that they have Shinjiro Otani, which is going to make it even more popular. you have the Rams, you have the Chargers, you have the Clippers, you have the Kings, you got the Ducks. I mean, you have the Angels. You have so much competition in LA that 27,000 seat is a lot to fill up. So 5,000 might be a little bit more reasonable, at least for year one. Maybe then after that, you can kind of move up a little bit more to the bigger stadium. But 5,000 is not a bad way to start, and definitely much smarter than what Gilchrist tried to do with the Guillotines, being at the Coliseum. And again, being a USC alumni, born and raised in the LA Coliseum, that was awesome. But 77,000 seater, hard to fill up. And it looked horrible on TV. 5,000 seats, at least for game one. When you take that fan base that's going for the sevens and just move them over, you have almost an instant sellout right there. So not a bad start and not bad marketing, if I say so myself, for that LA team. So that's what we know. So right now, the way that it stands, at least unless anything changes, we don't know anything for sure about LA. They are on the schedule. It's 11 teams right now, one conference, and it's going to kick off in March. So hopefully no other teams break up or any other news. We'll have a season. Like I said, I'll definitely do videos. We'll preview. We'll do the same thing like we did last time. We'll do pick'ems. We'll do all that. I'm excited for the 2024 Major League Rugby season, and I'm hoping the LA team will produce some really good results. Now, let's talk about the future, because there is talk about future teams added to Major League Rugby. I know they just lost 2 teams, but hey, a new LA team supposedly coming up. We have the Miami Sharks for sure. I mean, Miami Sharks, they have definitely, I got to give them a lot of credit. They've definitely been doing it right. Quite the difference from LA, where we've heard nothing. Miami, we've pretty much been hearing something from them from almost a year ago. Since almost the ending of last year's Major League Rugby season, we've been constantly hearing stuff about the Miami team. So they are for sure in. But let's talk about the future, where there has been an announcement of a possible new team coming in to 2025 Major League Rugby, and shockingly enough, from Mexico. So yes, it was brought to our attention that the Mexican Rugby Federation has filed the allowance of a team in the area of Nuevo Leon in Mexico. The capital is Monterrey, but Nuevo Leon is the city of Monterrey, Mexico. Monterrey, Mexico is located very, very close to the Texas border in Mexico, and they are going to have a team that is going to possibly be in the 2025 Major League Rugby season. Now, I say possible just because they have been given the go-ahead. There's been funding. The work is in. They're going to be building a stadium in Monterrey, Mexico, for this team. And everything's a go. It's just as long as, all the funding comes through, team is established, stadium is built. 2025, we may have a team from Mexico. Not only just that team, but supposedly they're also going to have a second team that will be competing in the Super Rugby Americas competition, which, if you remember, that is the competition which is primarily composed of South American teams and one team from the United States, which is the American Raptors team, located in Colorado. So Mexico will possibly be the second North American team to join Super Rugby Americas, and located again in Monterrey, Mexico. 2 former Mexican rugby players and a owner of the Houston SaberCats are supposedly behind this Mexican team, which makes sense because considering how close they are to the Texas border. So the Houston owner not having to go very far from Houston to run this new team in Monterrey, Mexico. Now, of course, question, how can an owner own 2 teams? Well, we've already seen that once before, right? With Gilchrist with LA and Austin. Hopefully it doesn't end as disastrous as that relationship did, but it is possible. And yeah, they are going to be building a 40,000 seat stadium in the Institute for Physical Education and Sports, INDE Stadium, INDE, in Monterrey, Mexico. It'll be one of the biggest stadiums they have in Monterrey. Monterrey has some huge soccer stadiums, but this stadium is going to be, for rugby, 40,000 seater, which, if built, will be technically the second biggest stadium in Major League Rugby, only behind Choctaw Stadium, which is a 48,000 seater that the Dallas Jackals play in. But of course, that was the former home to the Texas Rangers, which is why it's so big. And then just slightly bigger than the before mentioned Snapdragon Stadium, the new park built in San Diego for the San Diego Legion. So again, that's pretty exciting for those of you who are wondering where this new franchise team is going to be. Supposedly we'll have one in Mexico. Now, going into some rumors, as I mentioned before, about Canada. There's been talk about the Atlantic Selects, which is a local club in the Atlantic area of Canada, which is the eastern area of Canada, close to Quebec, but doesn't include Quebec, which also includes Nova Scotia. So that area is the Atlantic area of Canada, and there is a local team called the Atlantic Selects that has now become known as the Atlantic Privateers. Now, why does this make a Why does this matter? Is the Atlantic Privateers, they changed their name because now they are becoming a professional rugby team. The Atlantic Selects was kind of a high performance club team, which was used to kind of scout and produce young Canadian players that will eventually go into academies, which was supposed to go into the Toronto Arrows. So now this Atlantic Selects is going to become a pro team themselves for the possibility of either being in a Canadian competition, possibly being in the Super Rugby Americas competition, being the third North American team following American Raptors, the Mexican team, and now them, or possibly replacing the Toronto Arrows. They do work with the Toronto Arrows Academy. They are talking about trying to keep the Toronto Academies open. So there is the possibility that even though the Toronto Arrows are no more, maybe in a year or two, we might have a new team with this Atlantic Privateers rugby group. So we'll see. That's all rumor right now. No confirmation that they will be in Major League Rugby. No confirmation that they'll be anything, but they've at least made it known that they are becoming from a local club to a professional rugby team. So good luck to them on that, and hopefully it works out, because again, like I said, Canada kind of does need some sort of pathway to go from the local club area into the Canadian national team, and to just provide their boys with some competition on a year-round basis when they're not competing as the Canadian national team, which, as we know, was the biggest downfall for USA Eagles, why they weren't able to be very competitive in the World Cup scene, because there just wasn't enough consistency and competition for them. But that's what Major League Rugby is supposed to help develop them for. Which, again, I'm super excited for next season on that. So, yeah, that is pretty much everything that I wanted to cover in this video of what we know. It's been a hectic couple of weeks for Major League Rugby. So many people have been wondering how long the league was going to last now that we lost the Arrows and then we lost New York. Still haven't heard a thing from LA. But, I'm trying to look on the positivity on this. I do feel that 2024 season is a go. I do feel, like I said, LA, we will have a team. It's just we probably won't hear anything about them until New Year's, which, yes, does not give them a lot of time to build up hype, to sell tickets, because the season kicks off in March. We still don't know what the team is. We still have no true confirmation that they'll play anywhere other than the Dignity Health Sports Park. So, yeah, it is a little concerning. But I feel it should work out in the end. Is it ideal? No. But, hey, at least they know they'll have a fan in me. I will definitely buy season tickets. I'll definitely be there in game one. Work and everything, pending. But I'm super excited for this season. I'm excited for Major League Rugby. I'm excited for everything. I feel that, we can turn this around from losing 2 teams to establishing a new team in an old place in LA, and then the new team in Miami. And then again, the Miami team looks really great. I'll do videos on preview and all of that as well. But yeah, let me know in the comments what you think about all this. What you also think about, I know my last video when I talked about future places to open up a Major League Rugby team was huge. Now that we know where the sites are for at least the next couple of teams, from Mexico, possibly a team in Canada, United States, let's talk about it. Do you feel that we might get another team coming back in New York? We got our team in LA to possibly come back. What other areas in the United States do you guys feel possibly could have a team? I know there's still some people that really want that team in Alaska, want that team in Hawaii. Let me know. No place is out of the realm of possibility, but it will be interesting to see what would be the future for Major League Rugby. So that's pretty much it. Hey, I know it's been a while. Thank you very much for watching my video. I know it's long. Like I said, I hopefully they have little time caps so you can kind of go to the places that you want to go. But let me know in the comments below what you think about all this news. Will you be watching 2024? What team will you be rooting for? If you were a Toronto fan, if you were a New York fan, if you were an Atlanta fan, let me know what team you're going to be rooting for now. Will you be rooting for the LA team or the new Miami one? Or are you going to pick one of the other ones like the defending New England Free Jacks, the champions? Let me know. And again, thank you very much for checking out my video. Have yourselves a wonderful, safe, and happy new year. And I'll see you in 2024 on the pitch.